Hello, football fans. This is Anthony with Two Fat Guys Football. Uh, Coming with you today to discuss the Indianapolis Colts off season and how things are going. Uh, so a little bit different from our first video because the roster is in a more unique position. So I wanted to load in kind of where the Colts were at the beginning of the offseason versus where they are now. So I've got a couple of save files here for us to take a look at. So let's jump right into it. So as we look at where the Colts were at the end of the season, I think we can all agree that they weren't in a great spot, as evidenced by the fact that they have the fourth overall pick. But here's kind of what it looked like. Um, of course, kind of the two lead dogs on offense are Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor. I think everyone can agree that both of these players are deservedly superstars in this league, and we'll discuss them a little bit more um, as we get into the next file. But these are two of our cornerstone pieces, along with Michael Pittman Jr. I think safely those are our three best players on offense. Uh, Matt Ryan was still the starting quarterback um, for what it's worth. And then the rest of the roster was Nick Foles and Sam Ellinger. So, yeah. Um, Offensive line, one of the highest paid offensive lines in the league. Um, Interesting tight end room. Defense is kind of where the heart and soul kind of was. Um, True lockdown corner, um, dominant interior defensive line. And even though Shaq Leonard was hurt most of the year, if he was healthy, he leads a pretty good linebacking group as well. Um, so, all in all, I'll say most people think that the Colts performed um, not quite up to expectations for the season. Um, the coach Frank Reich got fired mid-season. He was replaced with Jeff Saturday, who came in and did about as well as I think anybody expected Jeff Saturday to do. So that led to where we are now. Um, so over the course of the offseason, in my opinion, I think that Chris Ballard has made some questionable decisions and maybe is, I don't know. I'm interested to see what the total plan is. Um, but as of now, I'm not convinced that the Colts have had a very good offseason. So from where we were before, if you look at the overall, the Colts roster just based off of Madden overall has gotten worse. And I think as we look at the roster, we can see that. We did replace Matt Ryan with Garner Minshew. Um, is that a downgrade? I'm not sure, honestly. I think Garner Minshew comes in and actually does better for what this offensive line is built for than what Matt Ryan provided. So he's much more of a mobile quarterback. He can make plays outside of the pocket. Matt Ryan was very stationary. One of the strengths of this offensive line in the past few years has been their blocking for the improv plays. They're good with quarterbacks who can move a little bit. So I think that helps a little bit. Jonathan Taylor, um, I don't think anyone can say that Jonathan Taylor is not one of the best running backs in the league. He is one of the best running back prospects that I've evaluated in the past few years. He kind of just does everything well. He dealt with some injuries last year that slowed him down and kind of derailed the Colts season a little bit because he wasn't there to take some of the pressure off. But I think when healthy, he is a true difference maker at that running back position. But the Colts did invest a very high draft pick in him, and I think they thought at that point that they were basically a running back away from being a Super Bowl contender, and as we see now, they weren't. So it does kind of go to show and kind of puts the onus on teams that are in a similar spot that are thinking about taking Bijan Robinson in this year's draft. Um, so yeah, I don't think any Colts fan is unhappy with Jonathan Taylor. I just think that ultimately, I think the organization might have been happier had they done something different. Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson is an all-world offensive lineman, one of the best offensive line prospects that I have ever scouted and evaluated. He is good in every aspect of the game. He's good. He's just very very good. While many will say that he regressed last year and didn't perform as well as expected, um, as I look at it, I see it more of a scheme and coaching problem and quarterback play problem than it was a Quentin Nelson problem. There were a lot of things that he was still doing very well, but it didn't equate to the same level of success due to some other things. Ryan Kelly. Ryan Kelly is a good center in this league. Last year, he had some personal off the field issues that I think significantly impacted his play. And I think this year, as we get further removed from those, I think he gets back to the player that we're used to seeing. I think Braden Smith is an interesting one. Braden Smith, I think a lot of teams would love to have as the right tackle on their team. But when you talk to Colts fans, they want him gone. They don't appreciate what he does, and they thought that he should have been cut this year. And he was talked about in some of the circles that I run in here locally of being very much a cut candidate as the offseason kind of started. So I don't exactly understand. He's still young. He's gotten kind of better every year until last year. He kind of plateaued a little bit. He was very similar to what he was the year before. But again, I think some of the issues we saw from Braden last year were a result of the scheme and QB play more so than it was his performance. Bernard Raymond is an interesting one. Bernard Raymond was drafted last year. He was a rookie. Um, he was yeah. He's an interesting kid. A lot of people thought that he was going to be in play to be the first tackle off the board, and he wasn't. He slid maybe a little bit further than some thought that he could, but he came in and performed like a pretty good rookie left tackle should be expected to perform last year. Um, I think progression is going to be key. I think we need to see him get better this year. But if he continues to get better, I think the Colts will be happy with that selection. The tight end room. Last year, one of my favorite picks that the Colts made was Jelani Woods. I do think he is kind of the long-term answer right now for the Colts at the position. He is an athletic specimen, 6'7", 250, good speed. He wasn't asked to do a lot last year. I do think he had a little bit of a learning curve, but some of the times he was on the field, he made some incredible highlight plays, and I do think he gives the Colts a good long-term answer at the position. Mo Alley Cox is, I mean, he is who he is at this point. Been around for a while. He's a good blocking guy. He's a good possession guy. He's a nice option on short to intermediate routes. He's not going to run away from anybody, but he's a good security blanket for whoever the quarterback ends up being. At receiver, the receiver room is a little different from last year, but not really. They let Paris Campbell go. They didn't try to re-sign him, and instead they brought in Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie brings a lot of the same tools that Paris Campbell did. He's a nice speed guy for the slot position. So he's very much the Colts slot receiver. He has had some trouble with drops in his career. So again, very much Paris Campbell. The Colts did re-sign Ashton Doolin, kept their own guy in the building, which is, if you see him as part of your plan, that's what the best teams do. You don't let your guys go. So they brought back Ashton Doolin, which is great. Michael Pittman is the star of this wide receiver room, and he's very good. He's a very good jump ball threat. He's a very good um, just receiver of the football. He catches just about everything that's thrown his way. Um, Route running is not the best, but he has gotten better in that aspect as his career has continued to progress. Alec Pierce is a guy that I'm expecting to make that year one to year two leap, very similarly to what Michael Pittman did. Uh, Another big guy, came out of the University of Cincinnati, and I really liked him as a prospect last year. I thought this was one of the Colts, another one of the Colts' best draft picks last year. He's a guy that comes in, and if he can make that year one to year two, like a leap similar to what Pittman did, he does give the Colts a very nice second option at receiver. I do like that a lot. Um, so on the offensive side of the ball, it's all going to come down to quarterback. And the answer at quarterback, I don't believe, is on the roster. It's not Minshew, but we'll see what it is, and I'll talk a little bit about more about that in a little bit. On the defensive side of the ball, the two linchpins here are DeForest Buckner and Shaq Leonard. Shaq Leonard missed most of last year with injury, but he is truly the kind of the heart and soul of this defense. When he is out there, he is a difference maker. Um, he's a tackle machine, and he makes the rest of those linebackers around him better because he commands so much attention at the position. I think he comes back and he's in for as long as the health is there. I think he is a prime candidate for comeback player of the year. I think we could see well over 100 tackles, some forced fumbles, interceptions. I mean, he's a true do-it-all off-ball linebacker. The rest of the linebacking core does have some question marks. Kind of the two primary guys would be EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin. Um, I really like Zaire Franklin a lot. He's a guy that, as you watch the tape, he kind of jumps off the tape at you. Um, Statistically, and kind of if you go back to like scouting profile and who he was as a player, he doesn't jump off the page, but he is a real football player. This guy knows how to play the game. He's just good, good all around. EJ Speed is another guy that I think can help the Colts out a lot. And then the Colts did bring back their own guy in Tyquan Lewis. He is a rotational end. Um, yeah, he's a rotational end. He's going to be out there. He's more run stop than pass rush, but there's nothing wrong with that. Looking at DeForest Buckner, when the Colts made the trade for him a few years ago, he brought something that they had missed, and that's kind of strength and grit and just a physicality that that I don't think the Colts had seen in quite a while. He is still arguably one of the best defensive tackles in the game today. He does everything that you ask of him and then some. He brings pass rush ability. He's a good run stopper. He's a guy that you can count on week in, week out. Grover Stewart. Grover Stewart is a guy that is kind of criminally underrated by a lot. He is another defensive tackle. He is much more of a run stopper than he is a pass rush guy. But the best thing that you can say about him is he is always where you expect him to be. He always does the right thing. You don't ever see him out of position. So he brings a nice tandem and a nice complement to DeForest Buckner. Frees him up to do a lot of other things. One of the Colts free agent signings was Taven Bryan. I liked Taven Bryan as a prospect coming out a few years ago, but the problem with Taven Bryan is he is still the same guy he was a few years ago. He never really has gotten better. He is what he was. At this point, he's a rotational D tackle. Mm. And unless the Colts plan involves trading one of these two guys, I'm not sure it was the best use of resources. Um, Samson Ebukam. Samson Ebukam is a guy that comes from a nice coaching tree. He's been coached by a couple of the best in kind of look. McVay and then Shanahan. So you can say that he knows what he's doing. He's been coached very well. They let Yannick Ngakoue go. They didn't attempt to re-sign him to a deal, and brought Ibukam in as a replacement to him. Samson Ibukam is a much more balanced end. He brings a level of run stopping that Yannick didn't. Yannick is much more of a kind of a pass rush specialist. So I'll be interested to see the fit with Ibukam. I think they might kind of rotate Ibukam and Taekwon Lewis here and try to rely on Kwity Paye to take that next step and become that pass rush end, which is what he was drafted for. He was drafted to be that guy. He's got great speed for the position. He was kind of incredibly raw when the Colts drafted him, and a lot of Colts fans that I know here in town were very unhappy with the pick. But as his career has progressed, he has won some of them over. Um, Kind of the problem that I have with the pick is not the player. I think he was great. He was fine as a player, but was where Ballard drafted him. I think he could have acquired some more draft capital, moved back just a little bit, and still got his guy there. So, um, and I have that thought on a little bit more than just him. In the secondary, the Colts traded away Stephon Gilmore, who was one of their free agent signings last year, for a fifth round pick. I don't know. Uh, I believe in Isaiah Rodgers, but I really like Isaiah Rodgers right now at this stage of his career as a second boundary corner. I don't like him as the kind of a lockdown boundary corner. Um, could he potentially get there? Yeah, absolutely. He's young, he's fast, he's better in zone than he is man, and that shows on tape. But as the year got on, he did get better at man, and I think some of that was due to having Gilmore on the other side. I think he was able to learn a lot um, from him. Uh, so I think the trade of Gilmore was very much a salary dump. So that's interesting. Kenny Moore is a very good corner, but I think he is much more a slot corner than he is a boundary corner. His natural position always seems to be the slot, and he seems to perform better in that than he does as a boundary corner. So I'm hoping the Colts' plan is to bring in a boundary corner somehow. Um, in the safety room, we have Julian Blackman and Nick Cross. Last year, Rodney McLeod was signed on a one-year deal, and Mr. McLeod performed well. Nick Cross was a great value get in the draft. He has incredible speed for the position. He is a big hitter. He's got good size, and he is incredibly young. So, I mean, a 20-year-old rookie with what he brings, if he can take even a moderate step forward, shoot even a minor step forward this year, um, and then do it again, over the next couple of years, the Colts could be looking at a real star on their hands at strong safety. Julian Blackman has kind of started that. I mean, he was drafted a couple of years ago and has kind of progressively gotten a little bit better every year. A little bit older than Nick, but also I don't think the safety room is the worst. Yeah, is the worst. On special teams, last year the Colts did have a real problem kicking the ball. They had some real kicking struggles. So to address that, Chris Ballard's biggest offseason signing was to sign Matt Gay to the largest kicker contract ever in free agency. Um, Good for Matt Gay. Um, would I have done it? No. Let's be fair. No, I would not have made that move. With as many other needs as the Colts have on their roster, um, I don't think $6.5 million a year for a kicker is the best use of your resources, especially when you didn't have a ton of cap space to begin with. There were some other guys that were out there and available that I think you could have brought in at a much more discounted rate. So, for my money, Robbie Gould would have been the answer. You probably could have got him, sure, for maybe just a year, maybe two, but you're going to get him for half the price, and he is still an extremely accurate kicker. Is Robbie Gould going to kick the 60-yard bombs anymore? No, but if you're relying on your kicker to kick 60-yard field goals very often, you probably have bigger question marks than kicker anyway. So kind of so far in this offseason, the Colts have done a pretty good job shedding salary, but they haven't gotten better. Um, I think there are some other potential moves that could be had to continue to shed salary. Braden Smith is one of those guys. The talk about DeForest Buckner being one of those guys. Even the talk of Kenny Moore being one of those guys. Now, if you're the Colts, why would you be looking to shed that much salary? Well, I think there's only one answer. If we look at if we look at the available free agents that are out here, um, I mean, Odell Beckham is not the answer. I like kind of like the thought of Marcus Peters. I think he's a guy that could come in and be a nice veteran presence, be a good boundary corner, um, help continue to help Isaiah Rodgers along. Um, if the price was right, I think that would be nice. I actually like the idea of Shaq Griffin a little bit more, even than Marcus Peters. He's a little bit younger. I think he's kind of hungry to prove that he still has what it takes to be a number one corner in this league. So you might be able to get him to come in and do a lot of the things that Gilmore did last year. Maybe not exactly to the level, but I think you could get him on a longer term deal. Um, and I don't think it would be too out of the price range. But as we continue to look, there's no real guards that are available. Right guard is a real question mark for the Colts. William Jackson could be another veteran guy, but don't see a whole lot out here that fits what the Colts are looking for and what the Colts need. So if you're asking me, I think kind of one of Ballard's biggest potential moves would be to go after a guy that we have right over here in Lamar Jackson. Um, I think if the plan is to shed salary, there's only one way you sign Lamar Jackson. Right now, the Ravens have allocated enough salary cap space to cover his franchise tag of about $33 million. You have to build a contract with a poison pill in it. The only way to do that would be to give him kind of a front loaded deal where the cap hit for this year would be close to that $50 to $60 million range. So to kind of shed salary, create that salary cap space for this year to do that makes a lot of sense. A lot of the Colts fans that I talk to here in the city think this is the best option for the Colts. So I'll be interested to see if he goes that route. Um, Based off some of the moves that he's made to this point, I do think it is a possibility that he goes that route. But there's also the chance that we just see the Colts address the quarterback position in the draft. The Colts do have the fourth overall pick this year, which puts them in a unique position. Um, the Panthers are picking up number one overall. They traded up from 9 to get there. No team trades up from 9 to 1 to not take a quarterback. So they're absolutely taking a quarterback. The Texans are also taking a quarterback. Um, um, so the question kind of becomes, who are those two guys taking? Um, if I'm the Panthers, my quarterback one throughout the entire process has been C.J. Stroud. Nothing has changed that for me. I think the Texans have been locked in on Bryce Young for quite some time, and I think Bryce Young is going to be the guy in Houston. So now you have the Arizona Cardinals on the clock at 3. There has been some talk and some chatter from people that I trust that are relatively tuned into the Panthers that think that they are having real discussions about Anthony Richardson at 1 overall instead of Stroud. If Anthony Richardson goes 1 overall to the Panthers, Bryce Young goes number 2 overall to the Texans, someone is absolutely trading up to number 3 to get CJ Stroud. I don't think there's a question about that. There are too many quarterback needy teams that um, have multiple draft picks, have plenty of draft capital to make a move like that happen. The most intriguing one to me is Seattle. Seattle has pick 5. Geno Smith is not the long-term answer there. Um, it wouldn't cost a lot to move up from 5 to 3 to take a quarterback. Um, so far, we have seen the Seahawks be intimately linked to C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Will Levis at their pro days. They are absolutely looking at quarterbacks. They're absolutely doing their homework. Um, the only reason we haven't seen them at Anthony Richardson's pro day yet is because, well, it hasn't happened. So I think we expect to see the same there. Um, I think the Seahawks look at themselves as being very close to being competitive. They also know that Geno Smith is not the long-term answer. Um, and with the draft capital that they have from the Russell Wilson trade last year, I think they could absolutely go quarterback. But let's look at kind of how Madden has some of these guys. So, like I said, for me, CJ Stroud has been the guy all along. He is plenty athletic for the position. He is your prototypical size, 6'3", 215. He has a very good arm. Does he have the strongest arm in the class? No, but he does have a very good arm in the class. So we kind of look here, 94 throw power. I mean, his throwing session at the combine was one of the best I've ever seen at the combine. So, yeah, Bryce Young, other than size being a question, he is equally as can't miss of a prospect as Stroud. The only question mark is his size. He's 5'10", and I don't believe that he's 204 pounds for a second. The fact that he didn't weigh in again at his pro day um, is a major red flag for me. Um, but I still like him as a quarterback. The things that he was able to do at Alabama were great. Anthony Richardson, he is just an athletic monster. He did things at the combine that no quarterback has ever done. I mean, he was great. He put on a show. Is he raw? Sure. Does he have accuracy issues? Yep. Are some of those fixable? Probably. But we'll see. We'll see. Um, but as athletic as he is, someone is going to take a chance on him. And then Will Levis is the fourth guy. He's the oldest of the top 4. Um, he is an RPO kind of specialist as a quarterback. He's built to run the RPO game, and I think that is where he is best suited. Now, if I'm the Colts and I have the 4th overall pick, um, I think you're getting the 4th best quarterback, and that's Will Levis. Uh, as an evaluator, I don't think that that's terrible. I think it's a good fit in Steichen's system. I think he's going to be fine. Colts fans that I talk to, this is a doomsday scenario. They do not want Levis. Um, they've said some very, very disparaging things about Will Levis. So he'd have a really hard time convincing the fan base that he is the guy. There's also talk that the Colts instead trade back from that 4th pick if they don't like anybody, and end up taking Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker is an interesting guy. Before his injury this year, and kind of what I was seeing from him at the time, I had a bottom end round 1 grade on him. He's a little older. He has some traits that make him unique in this class. I think he could be very good. I think he slides a little bit into the developmental stage because I don't think he's going to be ready at the beginning, which is another reason why I think having Minshew on the roster is a pretty good fit. He knows Steichen's system, and he could play while Hooker heals. So I think Hooker is absolutely in play for the Colts. So this is an interesting spot for them. Do you sit and take the 4th best QB and Will Levis? Do you trade back, try to get some draft capital and get Hooker later? or do you take the big swing and go after Lamar Jackson? Those are the real questions. And I think this is becoming a make it or break it off season for Chris Ballard. Um, I'm not sure what he said to Irsay to get him to not lose his job this past off season, but um, some of the moves that he's making right now kind of reek of a little bit of desperation to me. And either he's taking a big swing at Lamar, or he is really putting all of his eggs into this QB basket. And some of the things that he said publicly does not lead me to think that. So I'm not really sure, but kind of an overview of what we're looking at here for the Colts. Are they in a better spot than they were at the beginning of the offseason? No, I think they are in a worse spot now than they were when the season ended. I think there are a lot of other teams that were kind of behind them that have overtaken them with some of the moves that they've made. And I'm really curious to see how the rest of the offseason and the draft plays out for the Colts. Um, as a, as a member of the populace here, I want the Colts to be good. The city is a lot more fun when the Colts are good. So, Chris Ballard, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but do the right thing. Go get us Lamar Jackson. All right, guys, appreciate you, and expect more of these to come out. My goal is to get through all 32 teams before the NFL draft is upon us. So expect more of this content coming out soon. I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.